So in general, I am I have multiple dispositional things that I'm drawn to in terms of what I want from government, what I want from policy, what I want from society. And I found that a lot of the things I'm drawn to contradict one another somewhat. And so I have to try and find solutions that unravel those contradictions or get at the root of those contradictions. One contradiction is I'm generally not big on the whole personal responsibility thing. As an individual, you could be personally responsible. Sure, tell people to be more personally responsible, I guess. I just don't think it makes a very good way of talking about society to just be like, well, individuals should be more responsible. I think that you really got to look at the system. And so growing out of that, I tend to look at people's incentives, their material, financial incentives for why they behave a certain way. And I try to ask, is there, a reason our society is sort of encouraging people to behave a certain way and then blaming them when they behave the way that it encourages them to, right? So for that reason, I'm drawn to incentive policies. I'm a big fan of the idea of taxing sugary sodas and junk food while subsidizing healthier foods and making it more affordable so that anybody who goes to the grocery store, the incentives are there to eat healthy. You don't take a look at the celery and go, oh, that's expensive, and then take a look at the frickin' goldfish and go, well, hey, that's affordable. I could afford that. So from that direction, let's take a look at a minor issue, a very minor issue, not a partisan debated issue, fines for littering or parking tickets, right? Despite all of the criminal justice reformism, even the most extreme abolitionist, I don't think you'll find many abolitionists who are well, don't give people parking tickets. At the very least, they don't start there. They don't talk about it much. They're not get rid of parking tickets now. We can you can trust people to park their car or not park their car. You don't need to disincentivize people parking in the wrong spot. Abolish parking tickets. We don't need to be punishing people for this. It's not most people's first stance. Most people are pretty in favor of it. But when you talk about more serious issues, sometimes the charge will be a fine, right? And what a lot of people on the left will say, they'll say, well, if the charge is a fine, right, then it's legal for the rich. And they're not wrong. Yeah, no, that's a good point. If the fine for littering is $500 and you're rich and you can afford to pay $500 anytime you want, then of course, you're not going to worry about it. You're going to litter as you please. And on the other end of the scale, right, if you're very, very poor and you do something as minor as littering once, that $500 payment might be impossible for you to make if you're homeless and unemployed or something, right, and you can't pay $500. That could send you into a debt, right? And then that $500 could just grow bigger and bigger as you're poor and you're unable to pay it. It just gets bigger and bigger because now you're indebted $500 to the state, right? And then at a certain point, if you don't pay off your debts, you have to have court dates. You have to answer for why you're not paying off your debts. And if you fail to show up to your court date, right, which is hard to do if you don't have a car, it's hard to do in general. I'm bad at remembering things. I if court dates or anything like showing up to class on time, I would miss all my court dates. I would miss every court date, and then I'd go straight to jail. And that's what happens to people, is they miss their court date, lack of organization, or don't have a car, can't get there, don't remember when the date was when the police officer told them, don't have access to the internet, won't look it up, can't look it up, doesn't matter. They miss their court date, they go to jail. There is a solution, though, other than abolishing, fines for littering, right? Because we want people not to litter. we want that incentive. We want people to be punished somewhat financially for littering to discourage them. We want that psychological barrier, I think. I think there should be some disincentives sometimes. And incentives on the other hand, right? Like if we could give people $500 because for not littering, right? That would also probably be fine, but it's really hard to monitor people's behavior and like take their privacy so that they've never littered, so that you could set up a program like that, right? So obviously fines for littering is the most pragmatic thing to do. So how do we fix it so that that income difference isn't the problem? Well, it's pretty obvious. There's a thing called progressive fines, which does exactly what it sounds like it does. Much like a progressive income tax is disproportionately burdened on the rich and less burdened on the poor, a progressive fine, this is an idea that comes shockingly out of Finland. What? A Nordic country? A Nordic country doing something progressive? Who would have thought? Yeah, it comes out of Finland, and the idea is they do what's called a day fine. I don't know why it's called a day fine. But they determine it based on your income. They take a look at your income. If you're high income, they charge you more. They do it for parking tickets. I'm using littering as an example, but they do it for parking tickets. They charge you more, and then if you're broke, they charge you less. So that it reduces the burden on the criminal justice system, because not as many people are being put into debt to the government for little minor things like parking tickets, while still maintaining the incentive structure of discouraging the behavior. Now, if you're someone like me, you can see that this has a potential to be used for not just parking tickets, right? Because there are lots of places in society where I want to see a disincentive and incentive structure, where I want to see behavioral change, but I don't want to see it affecting the poor. I just gave a pretty solid example at the beginning already of taxing junk food and subsidizing health food. Well, maybe we tax junk food, but if you're broke, right, we alleviate that burden somehow, because obviously it sucks to only be able to afford junk food, and then for that junk food to get more expensive, that would just make it harder for you to eat or to pay for your basic needs. Right, so that's the criticism a lot of times of taxing junk food. The pro for taxing junk food is also very big, though, right? It's that it discourages people from eating junk food, which we are inclined towards, I believe. Some people try to, I think on the left, we have this mentality that the problem is just scarcity. That if we eliminated all poverty and all scarcity, and we put everything on a level playing field. Like if you showed up to the grocery store and there was healthy food and there was junk food and it was all free, so it's all on the level playing field, it's all zero. There is no, you don't have to worry about cost at all. If we just did that, then anybody who goes to that grocery store would make the right choice. We have like a deep trust, I think, on the left, that in the absence of scarcity, if people were just given the right resources, the right opportunities, that they would then be able to make the right choices for themselves. And I think that's why the left has this sort of almost contradictory thing where they believe very strongly in like social freedom, but then also economically they tend towards more, like you could say, like government control. But it's government help, government, assistance or what have you. It's because they want to remove that scarcity and create opportunity for people. And they believe that if you create opportunity for people, you can trust people to make good decisions for themselves. So I'm in a weird position. I'm sort of the opposite of a libertarian in this way, where I want to create opportunities for people for sure, but I don't believe fully, at least not completely, that people just make good decisions for themselves all the time. I think people are short-sighted, and when it comes to food in particular, I think people can get addicted to things like sugar. And so if both health foods and junk foods were both free, I do think a lot of people would still choose the sugary junk foods, and we would still have a problem. We would have a crisis of abundance, is what I would call it. A crisis of abundance. Like the movie WALL-E. Remember in WALL-E when they're all fat? Do you have any idea how many left tubers have made YouTube videos where they review the movie WALL-E? Because that's their whole fucking industry, is just going over movies, because that's the dopaminergic like hit they need to get into people's heads. They're trying to crawl. They're trying to get the politics into the apolitical people's minds, and so they disguise it as a harmless video about WALL-E. But then when you're watching this fun video about WALL-E, they tell you about how actually WALL-E is fascist. It's about fascism, because it's about how, you know, as society progresses, we all degenerate. We degenerate by getting fat and lazy and spending all our time on social media, which we do. That's correct. I'm sorry if that's what believing in degeneracy is. Then I believe in it. We have gotten fat and lazy, and we spend too much time on social media. That's 100% true. That's just 100% true. So yeah, there are things we can do about that aren't fascist though. So yeah, progressive fines have a potential to be applied in a lot of circumstances. I'll talk more in a future video about some of the other areas I think they might be able to be applied, but I wanted to pitch the idea first. Here's what a progressive fine is, and here's the tensions of the policy, and here's how it could solve this contention on the left.